ago, I was working on a project in this website building company I think you've probably heard of. And I found myself constantly fighting with the product managers. Some of the days, it felt like I spent more hours arguing than actually writing code. So I like to think that I'm special, but I'm sure most of the people sitting here have experienced this before. So it's a well-known secret in our industry that product managers and developers argue about tasks. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dalia, and I'm a guild master in the backend guild. And today I would like to talk to you a bit about this gap between us as developers and the product managers. So I would like to talk a bit about the problem and what are we fighting about. And then I will go over the 3 main points, which I think are time, code quality, and scope. And I will finish with some tips and ideas that worked for me, from my experience, and I hope can give you some ideas on what you can do so that you can have a much nicer work environment and better relationships with your product managers. So let's start by defining what are we fighting about. Well, before we talk about what's dividing us, let's talk about what's our common goal. So the common goal for anyone working in a certain company is the company's success. And the company's success goes very closely with the company making money. Now at Wix, our company's success is if our customers are successful. So if our customers can build websites that will be successful and will attract their customers to come and actually pay them money, then we will be successful because they'll be willing to buy premium subscriptions. That means that we need to give them the best features we can so that their users will be happy. But it also means that our system has to be highly reliable and available, because if their users can't reach their website, then they're losing customers, and so we're losing customers. And our goal as R&D is to supply code that is reliable, but can also let the company grow fast. So now let's the fight begin. So let's start by understanding what each of us wants. Well, as engineers, we're craftsmen or craftswomen. We take great pride in our code. No 2 engineers will write the same code for the same task. And what do we want? Well, we want quality. We want to write the best quality code that we can. We want to use the best technology, and we want to be proud of our code. But what do product managers want? Well, product managers need to deliver. They want to deliver the best products they can to the customers. When I started working on this talk, I was under the false assumption that product managers want to deliver as many features as possible in a given time. And then I went around and I talked to a few product managers at Wix, and they corrected me. They said the value to our customers is not in getting as many features as possible in a given time, but that the features that they're getting are of the highest quality. So they really want to deliver the best product they can. Now, the responsibility of delivering products is not the product manager's responsibility. It's the responsibility of the whole team to deliver the best product we can. But product managers are the one projecting it usually to management. They have to make the quarterly plan of what we're gonna do this quarter, and so it's in their interest to show that we're gonna deliver the best product we can for the next quarter. So, what are we arguing about? Well, let me introduce you to the project management triangle. It consists of 3 things: time, which is, I think, the obvious thing that we all think of when we talk about arguing with product managers. The second one is quality, code quality. And the third one is scope. And it's a bit like the CAP theorem. You can't have all 3 of them. You have to choose which 2 you're gonna have. So if you have a given time and you want your code to be in a certain quality, then you have to give up the scope. If you want to have your entire scope in a given time, you have to give up your quality. And if you want to have high quality and the full scope, then you have to have more time. So you have to choose 2. And as we'll talk about each one of them today, you'll see that you can't talk about one of them without talking about the other two. So they are interconnected. So let's start by talking about the first one, which is the most obvious one, time, or really, the lack of it. So usually, our main problem is we don't have enough time to write the code that we really want to. Which brings us to talk about the most dreaded topic, time estimations. So I have to confess, I really don't like time estimations. They feel a bit like a lottery to me. My ability to predict exactly how much time it will take me to do a certain task is guesswork. But over the years, I've learned to acknowledge the importance of time estimations, and I became much better at predicting them. So the first reason it's very important is because it really helps you coordinate with other teams. So almost none of us write code that we just rewrite and then we deploy to production. Usually we have to interact with other teams. So either we have a backend team interacting with this front-end team, or we have our development teams interacting with QA, or you might even find that you have a backend team interacting with other backend team. I currently work with Wix Code, and we're in the process of integrating all of the other verticals. And so we have to integrate our code with a lot of different verticals across Wix. So if we don't have time estimations, we can't tell the other teams we coordinate with when are we going to be ready to integrate with them. And they can't plan their work, or when should they start their work, when should they be ready. And so time estimations are really essential for us to be able to coordinate our work with all the other teams. The second important thing is that it gives us a transparency to management, so they can know what are we working on. What are we working on this month? What are we going to work on this quarter? So once we have estimations, the management can actually look at all the different verticals in Wix, in our case, and say, oh, okay, stores are working on this, and booking are working on this. It can give them an idea, what are we going to work on this quarter, and what are we going to do next quarter. The third one, which is important, is for your team. So if you give time estimations and your team knows what you're going to work on in the next week, in the next month, then your team can really feel the value that they are giving their customers. Which brings me to talk about sprints. So for a really long time here at Wix, I was working in teams that didn't actually have sprints. So we had a backlog of tasks, and each time I would take the next task. And once I finished it, I would take another task. And I didn't have a full picture of the value that I actually gave my customers. Then I started working in different companies, and each one has a different length of sprints. And I started seeing the value. So I think there is a magic number of a sprint that is a good size, a good time. And it varies between the teams. I worked in teams that had sprints of a week, which I think is too short because you spend too much time of the week planning tasks for the next week rather than actually working. Right now on my team, we work in sprints of a month, which I think is a good time frame. So each month I take 1 or 2 hours planning the task for the next month, so it's not that much when you look at a month. And then at the end of each month, we actually go and do a demo. So we have about 12 developers in our backend team, and we actually sit in a room, and each member shows what value did he give to the customers this month. And it's great. It gives a great sense of accomplishment to the developers when they can look back and see what they did in the last month. And the most important thing that I learned is that if I need to give time estimations, it forces me to break them down. Because if I don't want this to be a lottery, if I don't want it to be a guesswork, I need to break down my tasks. I'm horrible at giving estimations for big tasks, but I'm actually not bad at giving estimations for small tasks. I know how much time a small task will help me, so I have to break down my tasks. So what I usually do is I start by creating a task for research. Now I'm working, this month I'm doing research on the task I'll have to do next month. And what do? Well, first of all, I go to my product manager and I understand the requirements. I make sure I understand everything that my customer will need from this feature. And after I do that, I do something that a lot of people see as a bad word at Wix, which is I create a design document. So I think a lot of people came to Wix from big corporates, where you would spend a few months working on this design document with exactly what classes you're going to have and how are they going to interact with other classes, and then you would get to writing your code, and it wouldn't look anything like your document, and you felt like you wasted all this time on writing the document. So I don't want you to go and do class diagrams. What I want you to do is a high-level design. So have your system. See what other systems are you going to interact with. Go and talk to those people. See that they can actually provide you with the APIs that you need. Write down all the open questions you ran into. And then share this document. Share it with all the people you're going to interact with. Share it with your managers. Share it with the other developers in your team. Try and get as much feedback as you can at this stage. You will see that if you do this, you're going to uncover a lot of problems before you got to the dreaded stage we all hate of having to delete code that we've already written. And then after I do that, I go and I create small tasks, small subtasks that I will have to do in order to create this feature. And then for each task, I give a t-shirt size estimation. So I say, either it's a small task, and a small is a task that will be a few days, or it's medium task, that's 1 to 2 weeks, or it's a large task. And a large task is usually a sign of a task that has to be divided, needs more research, so we can divide it into smaller tasks. And some teams at Wix actually have a policy of only small tasks. So they say you can't estimate a task that is more than a few days, and if you have such tasks, then please go and split it into smaller tasks. So I would like to show you now 2 examples of splitting up tasks. The first one is from my team. So this is the project that we actually have that integrates all of Wix verticals into Wix code. And if you will look, you would see that we actually have some tasks. Oh, this is not working. Some tasks that are just research. So we say, this is a task for research, and then we'll create more tasks. And we use epics on Jira so that we can manage this, and we'll know everything we have in the subtasks. And the second great example comes from Wix stores. So Wix stores are currently working on redoing their tax calculation. And as you can see, they are actually splitting it down into small tasks. Each one you can see if it's going to be client code, if it's going to be server code, and then they use the point system. So each one they give a point, and each point is a day. So you can see that each one is 1, 2, 3 days, and then their board just goes on forever. I just put 2 screens, and then they calculate all the points. So they have a huge task, but they can know this is going to be around 132.5 days. So it gives them some kind of an estimation. And you will get it wrong. If you look at Google, you look up why programmers are bad at estimating time, you will get 3.3 million results because we are horrible at estimating times. The reason is that we forget to expect the unexpected. So there are going to be things that you didn't think about. You might get urgent production issues, some team member might get sick, you might find technical problems with your solution. Even if you thought it's very, very simple, you might find when you try working with a library that you didn't understand it completely. And there might be more important tasks that will have to come in. So you have to leave a buffer when you give time estimations for the unexpected. So we talked about time. Now let's see the second thing, which is code quality. Well, at Wix we have very high standards for our code. So we want to have very clear design. We want the code to be properly tested, and we actually ask everybody to do TDD. And we want it to be self-explanatory. So anyone who doesn't know my code and starts to read it will read it like a story. Now, sometimes you will be asked to compromise your high standards. And it can happen because of an urgent production bug that you have to deliver, or because of an urgent feature that our competitor has and we have to deliver now. And you should know what your red lines are that you are not willing to compromise. So, for example, at Wix, we're not willing to deploy to production code that doesn't have an integration test. So since the word integration test is overloaded, I will say that at least a test that goes into your system all the way down to your database and maybe even does HTTP calls to a mock server. That's if you're working on the back end. It doesn't have to be an end. You don't have to wait for a proper end-to-end test that actually starts all the server and has a Selenium. But you have to know that the code you're writing actually works. And I want you to know, and I want you to know that if you're asked to compromise those red lines, you should raise a flag, because you shouldn't deploy to production any code that doesn't have at least integration tests. And there's a wide range to quality. So I think different teams have a wide range of quality. And when I was trying to define it, I found that it's easier to define your code quality with sentences that you say to yourself. So I think there's the bad code, which is between 0 and 70%. And you would say to yourself, it's working, I will test it later. And you actually mean, I will test it never. And then there is the 70 to 85%, which is okay, but just not at weeks, because we want a higher quality of code. And you would say, I tested some of it, I think it's okay. And then where we want to be is really the 85 to 95%. And where you can say to yourself, I can sleep quietly at night. I know no one is going to wake me up because of production issues. Or someone else that will come and try and read my code will understand what's going on. And then there's the 95 to the 100%, which is the people that want their code to be the best code that was ever written. And it's important to understand that getting to the 100% is not linear. It's exponential. And you can work on for weeks and you won't get to the 100%. So just let it go. Release the feature and move on to the next feature. You're not going to need it. And there's the technical debt. So whenever you're asked to compromise your code, you are going to pay a technical debt. And like a real debt, you're not going to just spend this time that you gave up now, the same time in the future. But like a debt, it's going to have an interest. So you'll have to spend more time on it in the future than if you would have done it right now. And you will always have technical debt. Even if your code is always at the 95th percentile and it's always TDD and you refactored it properly, the more features you're going to add to your system, you will have to do a refactor to the system and you will have technical debt. Also, code that you don't touch goes backwards because the technology always goes forward. So you will always have technical debt. Doesn't matter how much you're going to work on your system. And then the third thing is scope. So usually our time is given to us. We have a sprint of a month. And the quality, we know we want very high quality. So the thing we usually have to compromise about is scope. So you have to prioritize the tasks with the biggest value to your customers. Now, some of us think that means only adding new features. But really, value to our customers, it's not just the features that they get. It's also the bugs that they have and really annoy them, so they leave our product because their bug wasn't fixed. And it's also our technical debt, which doesn't enable us to run forward fast and deliver the features that they need. And it's also production maintenance, because if we don't take care of our production, then our customers can experience downtime, and then they're going to leave us. So all of those have to be calculated, and you need to see how you balance between the number of features you're going to give and taking care of the technical debt and the bugs and production, etc. Which leads me to talk about managing our technical debt. So we saw that we're always going to have technical debt. We have to have ways to manage it. So the first thing to do is, if you can, fix it while you work on a feature. If you're working on a feature now and you see something that you don't like that needs refactoring, then see if you can add a few hours to do the refactor right now. Just do it. Just get it over with. And then if you can't do that, then go and add the task to the backlog. Don't leave it there. Don't say, oh, we'll get to it one day and forget about it, and then the next person coming in gets annoyed. No, go and add it to your backlog. And don't let it just rot in your backlog. but mix it in regularly. So every time you plan the next sprint, try and put in 1, 2 tasks, depends on how much pressure your team has right now, but go over your backlog, decide what's the most important, and try and work on it. And the last one is, if you feel that your project has accumulated a huge technical debt, then please raise a flag. We had it actually in the billing team. So I think the SBS is one of the oldest projects at Wix, and over time, it gained a lot of technical debt. And they raised a flag, they said, we need help. And we actually had quite a few weeks where we had people during Guild Week go over and help them write tests and refactor a little bit. And it didn't solve all of their technical debt, but it helped them. It gave them a bit of space to breathe. And so take advantage of your guild. Doesn't matter if you're in the back end or front end. If you see that you have a problem, raise a flag. Maybe you need more people working on this project. Maybe you need some help. Maybe you need someone to come and see why you don't get your technical debt. But please, raise a flag. Don't let it rot. And I wanted to show you an example of our board, where we manage our technical debt. So my team, actually, we have a board, and it's a long board, and we keep adding everything we find, and then we start going over it very slowly, and you see that we actually have tasks done, which we're very proud of. And so I showed you 2 things that I think we can do that can help us manage our tasks, which is have better time estimations and managing our technical debt. But I want to talk about a few other things that you can do to actually narrow the gap and bring down the tension between developers and product managers. But firstly, I want you to understand that it's in your interest to have a good relationship with your product managers, and actually with anybody you work with. So if you have a good relationship, you come to work in the morning and you're happy, you don't have to think about aggressions or about things that aren't working well. And it is not a war zone. Some people forget that we are all on the same side. Just last week, I talked to a developer that was telling me how they have big arguments in their team about the scope of their tasks. Guys, we're all on the same side. There's no reason to fight all the time. So what can we do? Well, I think we can all use some basic negotiation skills that we all have. So firstly, always be positive. Don't start a conversation by saying no. If a product manager asks you to work on a task and you say no, then straight away the conversation halts. There's nowhere to go. You can say, I'm not sure I have the time now. Let me check with my team members. Maybe someone else can work on it. You can say, I'm not sure we can get to it. What's the importance? Maybe we need to reprioritize our tasks. You can say, let me check all the subtasks, and we can prioritize it. It's not black or white. It doesn't have to be a yes or a no. It can be, I can do in a certain time only the 2 or 3 tasks out of the 5 you asked me. Choose which one to prioritize. And you should try and understand why the product manager asks you to do a certain task. So a lot of times you have some antagonism towards the task because you don't understand, why do we need this? This is stupid. So just go and ask. Don't say it's stupid, but go and say, I don't understand why we need this. What's the value to our customers? Can you explain the product better so I will understand what we are trying to do here? And prefer face-to-face. So when you send emails to people, or chats, but mostly emails, I think, sometimes people don't quite understand you, and it can feel much harsher than if you actually go and talk. So if you're in the same office, go and talk to the person, and try not to do it in let's set up a meeting to talk about our disagreements. Maybe try and catch them when they're in the kitchen making themselves a cup of coffee, and you can have a calm down conversation about what's going on. And if they're in a different office, try and have a video conversation with them. Look at them while you talk. It will actually calm down the conversation. And the last one, and most important one in my opinion, is be candid. So I think building a trust with people you work with is the most important thing. And if you're going to take one thing out of everything I'm saying today, please take this one. So trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. So try building a trust with your product manager. And the best way to do it is having open lines of communication. So let them know about your plans. Let them know how your plans are going on. So there's one thing I really, really hate, is people constantly asking me, what's the status like? What are you working on right now? I hate being pulled, and so I push. I go to my Jira board, and when I start working on a task, and I move it to in progress, so everybody knows what I'm working on now. It's in progress. And if I run into a problem, I add a comment. I add a comment on my task. I put everybody as a watcher, and I just add a comment. Everybody knows what's going on. And if I find a problem that I can't solve or that I think will take me a few more days, then I raise a flag the minute I found it. I don't wait to the end of the cycle for everybody to find out that there's a big issue going on and we're not going to deliver. And halfway through our sprint, I look at all the tasks that were assigned to me this month, and I say, am I going to finish all my tasks? And if I see I'm not going to finish them, then I just go. I go to my manager and I say, listen, we had such and such problems. I don't think we're going to get all of those done. Which one should I prioritize? So we have a trust between us, and then we can discuss which tasks we're going to do. So you don't get to a situation where the product manager thinks that you told them something because you're actually trying to stall or you're doing something else. And the other thing is to make the product managers feel part of the team. So a lot of times it's them and us, and they don't know what's going on. They know the features they ask, but they don't know that you have an urgent production issue you're working on, or they don't know that the guild has actually asked you to do something this week and so you're not working. So if you make them part of you, they can actually understand, and they will lower down the tension with you. So if you have a weekly status meeting, maybe invite them over, so they will know what you're working on, they'll know the problems that you found. Remember, product is really part of production. And there are things that we don't want to negotiate. So we do not want to negotiate our code quality. So sometimes you will have to because there's an urgent task going on. But if you feel that you're constantly asked to compromise the quality of your code, then please raise a flag to your guild. Doesn't matter if you're in the mobile, in the front end, in the back end. Go and say, we have a problem. Our company managers are constantly asking us to deliver code that isn't tested properly. And we will have your back and come and help you. That's the great thing about Wix and our guild system. There are people here that can come and help you ensure that your code is of the highest quality. So what did we see here? Well, we talked about struggling to balance time, quality, and scope. And we saw that having better time estimations and managing our technical debt can really help us. And we also talked a bit about negotiation skills and creating tasks with our trust with our product managers so that we can narrow the gap. And let me please finish with a personal wish. My friends, give peace a chance. Thank you very much.